Greetings, folks. My name is Jimmy Bashar with the ISO Stakeholder Affairs Group. It's my pleasure to welcome you to the web conference to discuss the California ISO Stakeholder Call over the draft tariff language for the slow DR proposal as part of the Proxy Demand Resource, or PDR, Resource Adequacy Clarifications Initiative. I'm joined today by my colleague, Sydney Manheim from Legal, who will be our main presenter for today, as well as Jill Powers from Policy, who is the lead for this initiative, and Lauren Carr as well from our policy group. Our agenda for today is to, of course, discuss the various draft tariff language proposed changes for this filing. We've also received one set of comments, responses to which have been posted onto the initiative webpage in preparation for today's discussion as well. In addition, the call and webinars in general are recorded for stakeholder convenience, allowing those who are unable to attend to listen to the recordings after the meetings. The recordings will be publicly available on the ISO webpage for a limited time following the meetings. Of course, the recordings and any related transcriptions should not be reprinted without the ISO's permission. And lastly, of course, if you have any questions in the room, please raise your hand by pushing #2. And we ask that you please state your name and the company that you represent. And with that, I'll hand it over to Sydney.
Hi, everyone. This is Sydney Manheim, and we are all working in our remote locations. And I did want to mention that in case you hear dog barking, I might have to take a brief break to relocate my furry friends to outside. They're quiet right now. So I will be first talking about the tariff language, which I believe is posted for everyone's view. We're talking here about the one aspect of our RA clarifications, which is the operationalization of slow demand response. And as the policy settled on at this initial phase of implementing slow demand response, we settled on issuing an exceptional dispatch in the post-day-ahead time frame, and with with an energy schedule, not just a commitment. So when we turn to the tariff language, our tariff language does not have any rules for settling the energy schedules issued in that time frame. We do have day-ahead commitments today in that same post-day-ahead time frame. Those are commitment cost instructions, and they are paid the commitment costs through BCR, and they do not receive an energy schedule in that time frame. So what we did, based on the policy of need to develop the settlement language to settle the exceptional dispatches, we settled on the non-transmission related modeling limitation. And to make one clarification at this point, we have a transmission modeling limitation exceptional dispatch category, and that is for a narrow subset of transmission issues where we have either don't have the full or accurate information from the transmission owner. The transmission owner is either coming off or going on an outage outside the time frame we have modeled, or in some cases it could be due to voltage issues within that transmission owner service territory. And then we call all other modeling limitations non-transmission modeling limitations. So they still could be transmission modeling limitations, but they also mean if it's not something that the model is currently implemented in our model, and because slow demand response isn't fully in our markets and we need to use the exceptional dispatch, we selected that category of for the use of the for an exceptional dispatch that involves an energy schedule in the post-day-ahead time frame. Then the main challenge to do that would be we could not base it on the real-time bid price, and that is because once the resource receives a specific schedule, and if it rebid it in the real-time market, with an exceptional dispatch, the normal settlement is you can get your bid price. So because it's in the post-day-ahead time frame, the day-ahead bids and the day-ahead prices would already be settled. So we essentially are substituting the day-ahead bid price for the real-time bid price and still settling it as real-time energy. So that is summarizes what this tariff language does, and I'll stop there to see if there are any questions on the settlement language and how we arrived at it and why it's in the non-T model settlement section of the tariff. So hearing no questions, Jimmy, we can turn to the matrix of comments.
Thanks, Sydney. Yeah, the matrix is now up. And as a reminder, folks, push #2 if you'd like to ask any questions. Thanks.
So our Department of Market Monitoring, DMM, submitted 2 questions. One question related to, the comments we made a little bit in describing the tariff language. DMM notes that, well, we do, essentially, why don't you use some of the existing tariff settlement rules? Yes, we do issue exceptional dispatches in that post-day-ahead time frame, but for those resources, they have been commitments, and there have been times where we would consider and may, as an option, we want to have an option that we would issue an exceptional dispatch energy schedule in that time frame, but we did not have that tariff language, so we settled on that practice of issuing commitment costs in that time frame, and then the resource would bid in the market and be subject to the real-time market power mitigation process. That can't work for slow demand response. Slow demand response and demand response, most such resources really don't even have any commitment costs, and they also need an energy schedule to prepare to respond to the demand response schedule. And so that's where we landed, issuing the schedule and needing a way to settle energy that made sense given the timing of the instruction. The other factor, and I should say that when we issue an exceptional dispatch commitment to a gas-fired resource example, that would be an instruction to turn on and operate at their PMIN level, and then participate in the real-time market through bids or potentially additional exceptional dispatches if the real-time market is not moving the resource in a way that the operator needs. We actually have some small number of resources that have a dispatchable PMIN that is above its minimum operating level, and we do define a dispatchable PMIN as having a ramp rate that is fast enough to be used in the market. The PMIN of these resources is so slow it cannot be usefully dispatched in the CAISO market, and historically we've had to exceptionally dispatch it up to its DPMIN. We did experience exercise of market power in the real-time market when we did that, so we went to FERC to ask FERC to allow us to apply the mitigated energy settlement, which is based on the higher of the real-time LMP or the resource's default energy bid, or if the clean bid is less than their default energy bid, the higher of the LMP or the clean bid. So that works fine for these resources with a dispatchable PMIN. They have default energy bids. They're able to submit bids in the real-time market, and they're dispatchable. This doesn't work for demand response really for a couple reasons. There isn't any. We do not have default energy bids for demand response resources. That would require a whole, initiative to develop and apply those. And then in the absence of a default energy bid, that would just fall through the formula, and they would just be getting the real-time LMP. We would have to go to FERC also to get ask FERC to allow us to apply the mitigated settlement, and that usually requires us to show that resources can exercise market power, not so much consistently, but regularly. They know when it can. They understand the conditions where it can rise, and they can take advantage of those conditions. So again, we are not in a position of applying it under the current tariff. It would require quite a few changes to demand response and additional tariff authority in the section, I think it's 39.10, to get an additional category of market of a mitigated exceptional dispatch energy settlement that would apply to the DP-MIN resources, adding a new category there. I will stop there and see if anyone has any questions on this first area. If
to ask a question, please press pound 2. At this time, we have no questions in the queue.
Okay. So then the second question concerns really observes that the way the tariff is written, it would apply, it's not limited to slow demand resources. And that is correct. It is written to fill a gap that we have in our tariff, that we don't have an energy settlement for an exceptional dispatch for energy given in that time frame. We don't expect that would come up frequently given the ability to issue commitment instructions and incremental exceptional dispatches in the real-time market, but it could be something that happens, and it's been a gap in our tariff that we want to fill. We don't want to fill it so narrowly that it would only apply to slow demand resources. So that's the really response to that question. Does anybody have a question?
Yes, we do have a caller on the line. Caller, your line is unmuted. Please go ahead.
Hey, Sydney, this is Christy from DMM. So I just wanted to clarify, what the difference is then between how you would classify a DP-MIN versus one of these slow DR dispatches. Essentially these resources can be committed as well. So I'm just trying to understand better, for our information, how we would parse those two and distinguish them.
Well, I guess I see the resources as being quite different. How we plan to dispatch the slow demand response is basically giving them a firm schedule for what they're expected to do in the operating day. There isn't any dispatchability, and they're not participating in the real-time market. For resources that have a dispatchable PMIN, we're trying to get them up to their dispatchable PMIN so they can participate in the real-time market through their, through bids, or potentially incremental exception dispatches, but they're dispatchable resources.
Okay, thanks. And then I had one more question. So I know you talked about that the existing tariff language wouldn't work for demand response in terms of settling them at a real-time bid. So we need to settle them at their day-ahead bids. And it sounded like the kind of the deciding factors that, some resources are subject to mitigation, DR is not. But there is language also in the added section about DEBs. So I didn't know if that impacted the application to DR as well in that section.
No, it doesn't. That's part of the drafting that allows it to be generally applicable. So in the case of demand response, it doesn't have default energy bids, so it would get, paid the higher of its day-ahead bid or the real-time market price. For some other resource, if we had given it an energy schedule above their commitment cost, then yes, they would be, the default energy bid would play into the formula for settling that type of resource. So, the DEB falls out for resources that are settled that don't have DEBs.
Mm-hmm. Okay, that's all I had. Thank you.
Okay.
At this time, we have no further questions in the queue.
Jill, any additional thoughts for?
No. The only other, we have the published, we have the comments filed. I guess from a scheduling standpoint, this will go to our Board of Governors in July, and it will be the full solution, inclusive of this tariff change and the reasoning for the tariff change, will be presented at that meeting. So stakeholders have another opportunity to comment at that meeting. So I think that's it, just from a scheduling standpoint.
And actually, from a tariff stakeholder standpoint, because there is such limited tariff language, we would not plan to have additional rounds of stakeholder comments based on the current comments that we have. Of course, if we receive additional comments in the response, in response to the board documents, we can always reconsider whether that makes sense.
Thanks, Cindy and Jill. We do actually have a question, a written question that came in the chat, which I'm happy to verbalize. It's from Brian Koyman. He asks, can you please clarify whether the tariff change only applies to exceptional dispatches? And will this change impact settlement for either the day-ahead schedules, other schedules, or real-time dispatches? It's not clear from the CAISO's response to DMM.
Okay, well, the market solution, just remember what exceptional dispatch is. It's an out-of-market instruction. So it does not affect anything else in the day-ahead market or real-time market. So we're giving a out-of-market instruction to a resource that is participating in the day-ahead market. So that instruction, because it includes energy, needs to have settlement rules. It is a market power mitigation approach to use the day-ahead bids once a resource knows its firm energy schedule. So it will not have any effect on the real-time market. Any market activity, the markets will operate. The market gets informed of exceptional dispatches, so it's aware of that resource is operating at a certain level, dispatches with that knowledge.
Okay, thanks, Sydney. And he said thanks, so I believe that answers his question, so I appreciate it. Thanks again, Brian. I guess with that, operator, do we have any further questions, I guess, before we end today's call?
We have no further questions in the queue.
All right, thanks so much. Thanks again, Sydney, Jill, Lauren, of course, and of course, folks, for your engagement despite the current events. We appreciate your input to date and your participation, and as mentioned, you can look forward to the recording on this to be available in the next couple of business days. So with that, please stay safe and stay happy, and have a great rest of your afternoon. Thanks so much.
Thanks, everybody.